I was just grateful to be back on my feet and healthy enough. And I do get reminded of that, like, hey, you went through this, but you're good. Don't take your days for granted.
What happened in 2018?
It was an open heart surgery. This happened when I was 28. They had been watching me for a while before that because of a couple of incidents that happened with my heart. And they actually found that one of my valves was leaky. So when your heart pumps, it's not moving the blood through your body efficiently. And it kind of starts to get tired. It's just not really able to do its job properly. They watched and eventually said, yeah, it's actually getting worse. And so you need to go get this surgery. And at that point in time, I actually felt probably the best in my life. I was exercising, hiking, felt pretty good. So I thought, that's no problem. And then I was faced with that news that actually it's not good and you need to go get this done.
What was the recovery like?
I know my age contributed a lot to the quick recovery because it's not that often they see someone who's 28 to get this surgery. So at that age, it's not like you're 10, but you can certainly bounce back. So I'm sure being healthy and in shape, it contributes, but also the age factor definitely helps. So if you're not an active person or you don't care about your health, you haven't really thought of it, I think it's really good to do. I think we should all be proactive when it comes to our health. So eating very natural, keeping active, even if it's just walking, but definitely start to take an interest in your health.
Welcome to Entrepreneurship Anywhere. I am your host, Nikki Corbett. On this podcast, we talk all about entrepreneurship, stories from startups to businesses that are thriving, and even a few who have had stellar exits. We talk about it all. My goal for you as a listener is to learn, be inspired, find folks to relate to, and even motivate you, as opportunities for entrepreneurship are abundant. And if they can do it, so can you. Entrepreneurship Anywhere, because no great venture started without the audacity to begin. I'm so happy you're here. What is up, everybody? I am your host, Nikki Corbett, and my guest today is actually coming to me from Thailand. He doesn't live there, but that's where he is visiting right now. Joel Oliver, welcome.
Thank you, Nikki. Appreciate the opportunity. And yeah, the time zone difference is quite significant here. So it is 3 a.m. here, but I've just accepted that lifestyle now.
Oh my gosh. I was thinking that right when you told me you were in Thailand. I was like, wait, isn't it like a 15-hour difference? But then I just didn't do the math for some reason. And now I'm like, wow, well, I guess you're not dealing with jet lag, or maybe you are dealing with jet lag and that's what makes you able to be wide awake right now.
If this was 24 hours ago, it would have been a different story because I could not stay awake last night, but I think I've resolved it. So we're good.
All right. Awesome. Well, so for everyone listening, especially if you are a new listener, when I first started this podcast, it was very much focused on telling stories of people that had had a major life change, whether it was intentional or unintentional. So in the first season of the podcast, there were lots of different stories about people who had their lives kind of rocked and ended up, started on one path, ended up on another. And we talked all about what had happened, how they approached it, what had changed and what they had learned from it and where they are now. Now, being in podcasting, there's a lot of different Facebook groups that are out in the world. I have joined a handful of them because I like to learn from other podcasters, especially those who have been doing it longer. But there's also often very cool conversations that go on in there. I happened to be looking in a group a couple of weeks ago, and Joel had made a comment about his personal journey and what happened to him when he had had a heart surgery, and also how he had built his business since then. And so I immediately reached out to him. So Joel, thank you so much for accepting my reach out to connect and for coming on and wanting to tell your story.
Yeah, you got it. I think it was just as much, the other way as well. So I appreciate you, seeing my story and thinking it was cool enough to feature. So
yeah, definitely. So, let's just jump right in. What happened in 2018?
So it was an open heart surgery, which they cut you open and put, I won't go into any more detail than that. But
I think probably everybody's watched enough episodes of like Grey's Anatomy or something to kind of have a visualization of what could have gone on.
Yeah, it was definitely the type of thing that everyone hears about and you think, oh, good, that's never going to happen to me. It's only other people it happens to until it's actually you. And yeah, it's kind of different then because we probably wonder how I would even handle that. Or like I said, just assume it's never going to happen. But yeah, once it actually becomes your life, you're in it. You have no choice but to go through it. But so I've been monitored for a number of years since so this happened when I was 28.
Okay.
They had been watching me for a while before that because of a couple of incidents that happened with my heart. And they actually found that one of my valves was leaky. So when your heart pumps,
Okay.
it's not moving the blood through your body efficiently. And it kind of starts to get tired. It's just not
Mm,
really able to do its job properly.
okay.
So they watched, and eventually said, yeah, it's actually getting worse. And so you need to go get this surgery. And it was funny because every time those appointments came up, I would get nervous, hoping
Oh, I
like,
bet.
let's
Yeah.
please keep it good news again. And at that point in time, I actually felt probably the best in my life. I was
Ugh.
exercising, hiking, felt pretty good. So I thought, this is no problem. And
Mm-hmm.
then I was faced with that news that actually it's not good and you need to go get
Oh
this done.
gosh.
The Canadian healthcare system is, not the greatest. So I didn't pay for the surgery, but it did take over a year from that news till I actually got the surgery, which
Oh
is
my
probably not
gosh.
great.
That's got to
But
just be
yeah,
daunting to feel like it's looming overhead for that long.
yes, because you don't actually know the date. You just know it could come anytime,
Oh
and
my
your
gosh.
condition is getting worse as time goes on. So
Okay.
it's not great. But anyway,
Were
yeah,
you feeling worse, or was it just more like internal that they were like, hey, we got to get this taken care of?
I didn't really feel worse. It wasn't really impeding my life. Some of the symptoms of what I had is just tiredness, that kind of thing. Your heart rhythm can be like go funny for a while, and I had a couple of episodes of that.
Hmm.
But for that year, no, it wasn't really anything that bad. And interestingly, my mom had the same surgery about a year before me.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
hers just affected her much later in life, so I'd
Uh
already
huh.
seen her go through that, and then I
Okay.
kind of knew. I wish I had gone through it first rather than her have to go through it first. But
Hmm.
based on that, I kind of knew already what to expect
Hmm.
and how it goes. So for that reason, it was probably a little less bad nerves wise as it could have been.
Uh huh.
But yeah, that's it. That was the lead up to it, and then 2018, I had that surgery, and it
So do they
was
just call you and say like, "Oh, hey, by the way, like you're on the schedule for this week"? Or
it
is
was
it
a
a little
little
more
yeah, it was a little
organized than
more.
that?
It was somewhat like that, but a little more
Oh my
notice. I
gosh.
can't remember exactly,
Okay.
but you have to go in days before and do some prep and that kind of thing. So it wasn't immediate, but it was fairly little notice. Maybe
And
maybe a month or two because I
okay.
went on a couple of more trips before it just to try
Uh-huh.
to keep my head clear and because
Yeah.
the odds were quite good, but you never know. You're just thinking the worst. Maybe this is my last trip, so I might as well go and enjoy
Mhm.
instead of sitting around being nervous about it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, like any surgery, there's always a risk. And I mean, I know going under is one of those just weird things. Like I was thinking about anesthesia one day and how it was even created and like who was the first person that was like, "Oh, I'll be the guinea pig for that." And, like, give me whatever you're going to give me and then cut open my body and let's see if I wake up in like searing pain. It's just unreal.
We are very fortunate to be alive in this time in history when so
Mhm.
many have come before us and allowed us to find out that information. And I think about things too, like flight. We have such
Yeah.
safe flying these days. There's so many people that had to make sacrifices to get us where we
Mhm.
are. So that's a great point. And yeah, I don't think I'd volunteer to be that guy.
I definitely wouldn't have.
Although I'm
Yeah.
not sure, when they invented like anxiety medications, for example.
Oh.
But I know when I
Mhm.
was going into surgery, that was an option, and I said, "Yeah, give me that. That's great." And
Yeah.
that changes your experience. So maybe if they had that ready before they did the experiment, because
Right,
funny
right.
enough, like as bad as it was leading up to it, on that morning when they give you the medication, by the
Mhm.
time I went under, I actually associate that memory, the last memory of like them putting the gas on my face. I
Uh-huh.
actually really find that soothing because I
Oh,
was so
okay.
calm because of this medication that they gave me.
Well,
So I thought it would
that's
be like traumatic, but it's actually I kind of think about it and relax.
mhm. Well, okay. I mean,
Weird,
that's
hey?
probably good though to feel like you're relaxed going into it. So
I
how long
guess
did the surgery take?
I think it's probably 8 hours.
Whoa.
It's not quick.
Yeah. Okay. And then do you remember coming out and do you remember your first memory post surgery?
It's yeah, the very early memory is a bit of a blur because I couldn't really tell what was my own. Like I just couldn't tell. I have some memories of something, but I'm not really sure if it
Yeah.
was me, like coughing. But then I had seen other people come out of it and my mom. So it was like, it's a whole big blur of what was
Oh,
real and
okay.
what's not real. But I know
Okay.
when they take your breathing tube out, you choke and cough, and that's
Oh
not cool. But
gosh.
yeah, I
Yeah.
do remember that initial period in the first recovery room. I have
Hmm.
some severe pain there, that kind of thing. The nurse being mad at me because I wouldn't go to the bathroom. So these are some of my earliest memories.
That's so funny. That's so funny. What is so
Yeah.
weird, because when you come out of anesthesia, it's like you sit there and you're lucid and you're talking, but then it's like it takes a while for you to kind of like really come out of it where you start actually remembering things.
Yes, and I had a few comments from my family that I was slightly short-tempered at the time. Now
Oh,
I'm a
really?
very kind person, so
Uh-huh.
I would never be outwardly angry at anyone or a nurse especially, but I think I
Yeah.
was like you, just a little cranky, right? So I don't know
Oh,
what it
sure.
was, but yeah, you're just everything hurts, you're doped up on drugs, so that's one thing I know. And yeah, other than that, it's just one day at a time. Just gets
Yeah.
better. Just because, yeah, when you're in it, you don't really have a choice. You're just there,
Hmm.
and whatever it is. But yeah.
So you mentioned that you had been like working out and hiking and doing things before you had that original appointment that had where they had found out that like, hey, you actually have to have surgery to get this fixed. So because you do take care of yourself and you had been taking care of yourself physically, what was the recovery like? Was it still very tough, or do you feel like the physical fitness that you had done made it easier?
It probably did. There's still a period of time when you just have to rest because you're like
Mhm.
they rip your whole upper part
Yeah.
a half, and you like it's healing, so you've got to be very careful in what you lift. But
Mhm.
I know my age contributed a lot to the quick recovery because it's not
Sure.
that often they see someone who's 28 to get this surgery. So
Okay.
at that age, it's not like you're 10, but you can certainly bounce back much
Yeah.
quicker than say my mom, for example. She was in her 50s when she had it. She just had a longer recovery period. So I'm
Okay.
sure being healthy and in shape it contributes, but also the
Mhm.
age factor definitely helped. Like I think it was within 2 or 3 months I was up. I wasn't completely myself, but I was able to go around and try
Mhm.
to have fun and go out, things like that. So it wasn't that long, but it was
Yeah.
probably a year or so before I really was back to 100% and able to lift weights confidently and that
Uh-huh.
sort of thing.
Wow. That is a journey. So what what changed aside from them fixing your heart? Like what changed within you post surgery?
Hmm. I would say like one thing that it forced me with the business to learn to trust more and delegate more.
Oh
But
yeah.
even with myself, like I kind of thought, this is like, is this going to be life changing? Because I'm getting, maybe if I couldn't get this surgery, I would have a much shorter life, and I
Mm.
should be reflecting and grateful for being alive. But after I got out, like, yeah, I was grateful, but I didn't really have this big epiphany. Like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna be a better person every day. You just kind of slide back into life, which,
Uh-huh.
I had a conversation with a podcast host who she talks only to heart surgery patients. And she
Oh
said,
wow.
that's okay. It's
Uh-huh.
okay if you don't have this big thing. I
Yeah.
still always try to make the most out of life,
Uh-huh.
regardless, depending, it's debatable what that is. I like to work a lot. Some people would say you should be out making more memories, which I also like.
Yeah.
But in terms of big change, I don't know. I was just grateful to be back on my feet and healthy enough. And I do get reminded of that from time to time. Or I think
Mhm.
about like, hey, you went through this, but you're good, and don't take your days for granted. I don't know if that
Yeah.
attitude is because of the surgery or not, but I do carry that around.
Mhm.
Try not to waste time, whatever it is. Just try to
Yeah.
make the most of every day, and make more of an effort to see your family and friends, that sort of thing. But maybe
Mhm.
that's just me. I don't know if the surgery was the cause of that, but yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. But there was no big shift in my thinking. I'm just grateful to
Uh-huh.
be, just grateful to wake up.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I don't think that there's like any right or wrong answer. But I was just curious if there was any like major shift, or if you, I think that probably subconsciously some of the way that you approach life, and you're, not wanting to waste time, and you're wanting to enjoy life with family and friends, and do things that matter, is probably a somewhat of a result of what you've been through, because I mean, that's got to be so scary to have to know what they're going to do to your body while you're just like knocked completely out.
It is odd, yeah. And I went to the positive on that answer, but I will throw this in there as well too, now that I think of it, just to give the full picture. Like, it gives you a bit of nervousness as well, because every little thing you're quite sensitive to. Like, if your
Oh,
heart skips
okay.
a beat or something, you
Oh,
think, "Oh no,
uh-huh.
I'm dying." But
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's fine.
Right.
So you always have that on your mind as well, especially if
Mhm.
you're more of an anxious person. You've
Mhm.
got to, depending on the medication you're on, you've got to watch your diet, things like that. So there's a whole
Uh-huh.
other element to it. That's the downside, but that didn't really bother me that much, because it just becomes your life.
Yeah.
Beforehand, it's daunting and intimidating to think that your diet's going to be restricted, but once you learn and get used to it, it's just life. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. I think that that's a good mindset to have, because I do think too, I mean, it's almost like anytime somebody wants to make a change, it can seem so daunting, and it can seem like, oh my God, am I not going to ever be able to do this? Or am I never going to be able to eat that? And then you just get into like new habits and new routines. And then it's like, you almost don't even think about those other things anymore, because you went for it and you made the change, or what, for whatever reason. And then you're like, oh, this is my new normal.
Yes, and I appreciate that aspect of it as well. There's certain things, like there's medications I'll never be able to take, or supplements, which I kind of be interested in, because I'm interested in healthy living.
Uh-huh.
So as you get this age, people's their hair, they start losing their hair. So I have male
Uh-huh.
friends who are like, "How do I got to go get this medication," or that kind of thing. I can't take that. I can never
Oh.
take it. So I just have
Uh-huh.
like dismissed any worry about my hair, because I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So it's just like, next problem. I
Right,
don't have time. I
right.
cannot worry about this. I cannot do. There's no solution to it. I'm alive, at least. That's what I got to be thankful for. So
Yeah,
in that way
yeah.
too, it does kind of improve your mindset.
Uh-huh. Oh, that is really interesting. Yeah, it's kind of like, okay, whatever, I can't do that, so let's just move on to something else.
Yeah. Otherwise,
Nice.
I might have been just worrying about that all the time, or
Right.
who knows.
Well, it's so funny. So I was just recently in Europe, and I was in Istanbul, Turkey, and that is like the hot spot for hair transplants.
Yeah.
And the amount of men that my friend and I saw walking around who had clearly had a hair transplant, it was kind of like jarring at first when you first see somebody, because it's like, oh wow, okay, they really mean it when they when they do
Hmm.
it. There's all these little dots everywhere.
That could have been
So
me, but now I just
yeah.
whatever. I wear a hat.
Hey, there you go. Embrace the bald. My brother always says, embrace the bald. He's been shaving his head since he was like 18. So
Yeah.
yeah. Awesome. Well, let's like shift into business conversation. So you have a podcast studio production company. And did you have that before the surgery, or is this something that you started after?
It it kind of all originated from me freelancing. So that
Okay.
kind of began in 2015.
Hmm.
I was doing voiceover at first, then
Oh,
it
cool.
evolved into more audio editing work, which became
Uh-huh.
podcasting. And then somewhere along that way, I transitioned from just being a freelancer to having an actual company.
Hmm.
And that all actually kind of happened around the same time. Like the beginning of 2018 actually is when it became an official company. So
Nice.
that's when that happened. Yeah.
So what's your background before getting into freelancing? What did leave? What did you start out doing when you were a young adult?
For my entire life, I had been into audio. So, like back in
Hmm.
school, we were doing audiovisual stuff, and I was DJing. I just always had an interest in this type of thing. So, when it came to
Cool.
college, I just thought, okay, I'm an adult. I'm supposed to go to college. What should I do?
Yeah.
And so I went down that route. I did a program for audio engineering,
Hmm.
because I thought, well, I already know all this stuff. And of course, there was more to learn, but I knew a lot for someone of that age. I just
Uh-huh.
thought, well, no one's going to take me seriously unless I have a piece of paper on the wall. So I better go
Mm.
do this program to prove that I know how to do it.
Uh-huh.
And I graduated second out of the entire college. It was only for audio engineering.
Oh my
I'll
gosh, good
always
for
remember
you.
that
That's
one person
awesome.
that beat me.
Yeah, right? You're like, "Mm."
Yeah, but so I don't know that I needed that to go down, like to go on the same route that I did, but
Mhm.
regardless, it was what I did.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that happened. I was working after that a bar gig doing like live band sound for
Oh,
a
cool.
bar back on, not the
Uh-huh.
most luxurious, but it was kind of cool. Like I liked some
Yeah.
aspects of it. But yeah, then I began that freelancing thing online, and that's how it evolved into where it became the business.
Okay.
Just
So So talk to me about the business. I was looking on your website and it was talking about like the different your more health focused podcasts that you guys work with and produce.
Hmm.
And so how did you dive into that space and, kind of capitalize on that niche?
Yeah, well, that was a relatively recent development, or it's been in progress for a while. We only just finally launched our new website and our new
Okay.
brand. Up until probably a year or two ago, we were just more of the do anything for anyone type
Hmm.
business because I don't have a
Okay.
business background, which is probably something that would have helped me,
Uh-huh.
you know, more of learn as I go.
Hmm.
So that do anything for anyone type of model doesn't really work, or it only works to get you so far.
Hmm.
We're just kind of spinning our wheels. Then once things got maxed out, we're getting low paying clients, sure, and people that just don't stick around. They're not serious about podcasting.
Hmm.
And I just so happen to run into at a networking event a business consultant, and I'm usually a little apprehensive about people in general, but anyone that
Uh-huh.
has an offering, like I'm just not always convinced that this person can help because we've all been burned. So
Hmm.
for me, I'm not actively seeking out someone who to help. I don't really know who to help. That's also a problem. I just don't really know what I need, but I'm
Okay.
apprehensive
Hmm.
about even finding anyone. So I run into this guy and we end up kind of chatting and becoming friends. So I actually trusted him and what he was
Uh-huh.
saying. So it led us to work together, and
Okay.
he put us down this road of productizing our offering. So
Hmm.
no more of this like a la carte stuff. It's
Hmm.
go out and find your most ideal client. Like let's
Yeah.
look at who your best clients are, what is in common about them, what do
Hmm.
they need, let's make a package just for them, and then we're
Hmm.
going to go into this niche of
Hmm.
whatever that happens to be and serve them. So this is where it came from. Some of
Got
our
it.
best clients were in the health and wellness space,
Okay.
and it just made a lot of sense to go that direction because we already had them there. We had the synergy. I have an interest personally in health, healthy
Hmm.
living, and I was really impressed by some of the things I would see our clients doing. Like I'm
Yeah.
hearing stories from lives they are changing because
Hmm.
we have this great medium, the internet podcasting, where you
Yeah.
don't need to just deal with a doctor anymore. Anyone can
Uh-huh.
share knowledge, and it's literally changing people's lives who could have lived for many more years in pain or unhappy
Hmm.
with how they look or whatever the case. And I'm
Hmm.
seeing these success stories, and I think this is so cool. Like I'm much more passionate about this specifically than just any podcast as a whole.
Hmm.
Like this is just great. Like I can personally I have a great interest in what they're doing. I can
Yeah.
connect people within this space because I know people that specialize in other services, and I've connected podcasters with other podcasters for
Hmm.
guesting. So it
Yeah.
just made a lot of sense, and it's much better in terms of messaging and being able to speak who we want to reach when you
Hmm.
have that target, rather than just, hey, we're just another podcast production company
Hmm.
for whoever it's just a lot. That's I don't need to get into niching, but this is essentially
Hmm.
why we went down that path.
Okay. No, I think that's really neat because then well, number one, I could see your passion for it, right? It was like right when you started saying like, well, these are all the companies that we're doing with, that we're
Hmm.
working with. And just talking about all the things that you learned by having those shows as part of your platform. I mean, I can see how passionate you are. And that's exciting because, if this was a health and wellness podcast and I came across your service, I if I had a conversation with you and you were like so fired up about what it was I was doing, I'm like, oh, well, this is cool. I love that. So that's really fun. Um, so are you able to work with shows that are anywhere because of how the nature of how you guys run the production?
Yes, so it's always been a completely online business. Although
Hmm.
the word studio could imply that there's a physical space to go to, there's no physical space. Everybody that works with us, they record in their home, their office, in a local studio where they are. They
Hmm.
send us the material. So yeah, it's essentially anywhere in the world. Although the clients are generally focused in the U.S. and Canada.
Hmm. That's really neat. So where are you? How many podcasts are you guys producing at any given time? Like how big of a team does that take to do?
Mhm. We have a team of 10 to 12 people usually.
Hmm.
We still have some, say, I'll call them legacy clients who aren't as consistent as the newer clients that we've been
Hmm.
bringing on. So we probably have, say, let's say within the last 90 days, probably worked with anywhere between 100 and 150 unique podcasters.
Wow.
But I'm continually trying to get that to a smaller number
Uh-huh.
with this new type of service that we're launching because I can help people better then, and it's just more efficient for us. Like, this was one of the issues we ran into with the business before, is people who just podcast once a month or once every few months, then they
Mhm.
come back and I don't even remember who they are.
Yeah.
And they may give up because they're not really getting results because they're not being consistent. So this
Right.
was another thing that the consultant helped us with, is identifying who are the ones that are very serious
Mhm.
about this, because that's what I want. I want to like go out of my way to find a great client, and
Mhm.
they're here, they're podcasting weekly, they can pay
Yeah.
the proper fee for us, and then I can spend more time with them to help them get better results, as
Mhm.
opposed to if I'm just spinning my wheels working with all these people that are just coming and going. I can't really get to know any of them. I can't really, give them that assistance to grow. So
Yeah.
that's why we went down that road. But we still have some of them that will just, over time, they'll just fade out or whatever. That's fine.
Sure.
But I'm hoping to get that number smaller, and then we'll scale from there with that
Uh-huh.
kind of service where everyone is weekly and consistent, because
Mhm.
they're the best kind of clients to work with for us.
Yeah. No, that's funny. And I like where you're heading and what you're and why your why behind why you're wanting to go that route. Although it is kind of funny to hear somebody say, like, I want to decrease the number of clients I have right now, but then
Yeah.
to scale it the way that you want. I mean, I saw a statistic the other day and it was talking about podcasts and saying how I think like it was a huge percentage. Maybe it was almost 90% of people that start a podcast don't get past like episode 3. And then it was like, if you've done more than 20 or 25 episodes, you're in like the top 1% of podcasts out there. And I just thought that is absolutely mind blowing.
Yes, that is a statistic. I heard different numbers going around at different times too, but I know what you're talking about. And there's another
Mm-hmm.
new one that came out that, like, again, solidifies this, which was basically suggesting, and this was from Podmatch, their November
Mm-hmm.
2024 industry report,
Uh-huh.
basically saying that if you were able to hang in there for 2 years and or 100 episodes, that's typically on average where podcasters start seeing results. However,
Mm.
93% don't make it that far.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
you could talk about podcast.
93%.
Yeah, and you could look at podcasting or look at business. Nothing brings you success overnight. You do actually
No.
have to like hang in there and do
Yes.
something for a while. I don't want to come across as one of these guys that is just always shilling the service that I provide. Like, everyone
Mm-hmm.
should do a podcast and it's going
Mm-hmm.
to be amazing.
Yeah.
But it is true. Like, you do have to stick with it for a certain period of time. And the fact that people would give, like, so many give up, obviously, whatever things, businesses are going to shut down. They're going to have their reasons. But
Mm-hmm.
people who are looking for success, to start a podcast but not be committed or not fully understand what's going to be required, it's just kind of a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you do need to commit for that period of time. That's all there is to it.
Totally.
Or starting a YouTube channel, they say 3 to 5 years. There's no overnight success. Anyone who
Yeah.
says there is just lying. So it is a shame to see that many people stop, but it's
Mm-hmm.
just the reality of it. It means if you can actually stay and do a good job over a long period of time, you have a much higher likelihood of succeeding because
Right.
of those people
Right.
that did give up. So, be one of the people that don't give up.
Mm-hmm. No, I love you for saying that because I think it is so true. And I talked about this recently on a podcast that I was a guest on, and how we're in this environment of instant gratification, right? It's like I can go on my phone and order something from Amazon and it can get here tonight. And you see all these different people out there who it's like you're you're not watching the work that they're putting in that they're not showing you, right? And you're just seeing like, oh my God, and time goes by so fast. So it's so easy to look at somebody and be like, oh my God, I feel like they just started that and now they're like killing it. And when in reality, they've been like busting their buns at it for years or longer to try to make something and put out what it is that they want. And I mean, it's like physical fitness, right? Like, I would love it if I could go and lift weights one time and be like, wow, look at all these muscles I have. But like, it's just not how it works. You have to continue to work at it and be consistent and be disciplined. And then, I know with my own podcasting journey, there's so much more that goes into it that you don't think about at the beginning. And then, I mean, I'm constantly learning. I feel like almost every week there's something I see and I'm like, ooh, I can tweak that. Or, oh, I'm going to change my intro to be a little bit more like this, or all the different things. But I'm also like just been so committed to putting out one episode a week and having it, come out at the same time, so people like know that if they're listening that, hey, it's going to drop, I'm going to get the notification from Spotify or Apple or YouTube or whatever that a new episode is live.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it was it the Valley of Despair. That whole thing of like a lot of people can't continue on until they see the results. Like if they start
Hmm.
seeing the muscles come in, then now you're excited. But that
Yeah.
period before you start seeing the results, it's hard to keep motivated. Uh,
Hmm.
and yeah, like you're saying about the podcast, it does take time, and this for anything. Like there's so much to learn and improve upon, like you were getting at.
Hmm.
So I see people get hung up on the wrong things too and not getting started or giving up too early. When it's
Hmm.
just, you just got to do this for a while because your first episodes, you're not going to be that good. Then
Hmm.
as you learn, you might hear, oh, I got this one tip this week that I'm going to start implementing. And then
Yep.
someone else told me I got to tweak this and this was wrong. And it's just, it takes time. And then if
Hmm.
you're doing interviews, the outreach to guests and getting that systematized and
Hmm.
growing like your ratings and that kind of thing. So you've got a bigger history to work with and approach bigger and better guests, and then your results are
Hmm.
exponential. It's just, you cannot do this quickly
No,
because of
you
all these
can't.
little tweaks and improvements that you
Yeah.
are going to make as time goes on.
I know exactly. It's like you're not going to start your podcast tomorrow and get like Brad Pitt as a guest by Friday, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And like one thing we've been working on is our Instagram. I don't really like it,
Hmm.
but I reluctantly got into social media, and I'm always
Hmm.
watching videos and hearing little things, and I'll message my business partner and say, oh, we got to do this and we got to do this and this. And you realize that whatever, 6 months ago, 3 months ago, whether it's a podcast or anything else, you totally sucked compared to now because you're always learning
Right.
so much. Oh, I didn't
Yeah.
have a clue what I was doing back then.
Totally. Totally. I like you're literally talking like you are me. I mean, all of the different things with doing the social media and getting things like, edited properly and using the different tools that are available, and then, and then not to mention all of the different, I don't know what to call them. I don't know if they're like scammers or if they're just people that, you know, don't have the best approach in trying to offer their help. I don't know what it is, but the amount of emails that I get in my inbox from people that, are, oh, I saw your show and I can help your viewership, or I can help your SEO, or I can help this and that. And I'm just like, delete, delete, delete.
Good. Well, yes, don't take those people seriously. I know I've seen a lot of that too. It's just, yeah, at least the industry is thriving. There's lots of activity. We can
Yeah.
say that. And one
Yeah.
thing you touched on too was the tools. That's another thing that comes up
Hmm.
because many of us aren't even aware, this has been my experience, that a particular tool or a method exists to solve a problem. Like you might be
Hmm.
struggling trying to figure something out for a long time and
Hmm.
realizing later, oh my gosh, this thing existed that takes care of that entire problem. I didn't even know
Right.
to search for that. Like I didn't even
Yeah.
know that could be looked for or that a solution existed. So you're
Hmm.
constantly just getting better and more efficient in all these things over time.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's like there's so much learning and there's so much more to podcasting than just this part of it. Having this conversation that we're recording, like there's so much more to like make it good. I actually got a notification a few weeks ago when I went into my Instagram account for the podcast, and it was like, in order to avoid your account from being shut down, you need to change your password. It appears that you're using automation to, and I was like, okay, first of all, I'm not. And second of all, like, okay, like I'm literally like posting reels, creating them in your app. Like, I don't know what more you want from me, but okay, I'll change my password. So
Hmm.
but then I was a little scared. I was like, oh no, like don't delete this. Like, this is all good stuff in here.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the arguments they make for email lists these days is your social
Hmm.
media. And I've heard these stories can just disappear in the blink of an eye. Their
Yes.
support is all AI based. You can't get a hold of anyone. Your account's
Oh,
gone. That's a nightmare. So it's good to
yeah.
diversify when it comes to
I
that
know.
stuff.
It's so funny. AI keeps coming up in the conversations that I've had this week about, all different types of topics, which I think is like so interesting because AI has infiltrated like every aspect. But it drives me absolutely crazy with support when it's all AI based, because I'm like, okay. And then it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't understand what you said. And I'm just like, I just want to talk to a person. Just give me a human
Yes,
being with a heartbeat.
all of those. Or, why don't you try one of these articles? I wouldn't
Yeah.
be here if those solve my problem. Now let me talk to someone. Or
Right. I
which
know.
category is your problem in? Okay, none of these is what I
Yeah.
want. It should, I don't, it's not even worth wasting any mental bandwidth on, but it's so frustrating.
I know, it really is. So, from Okay, so you mentioned that you were in doing some freelance work. You were around 2015. So what was it? What was the tipping point for you to kind of say like, okay, now it's time to actually turn this into a business and like really instead of being kind of like a solopreneur, just like an individual, I don't know, that's not the right word, but just like a freelancer, right? How did you decide like, hey, I really want to make this a business? Like, what was it that shifted for you?
Well, so I was doing voiceover at first,
That's
and that
really
was kind of,
cool. Is it
yeah, it was
fun?
fun. I liked it, and it was fascinating. Like that was the first time I ever made any money online, and I just couldn't
Uh-huh.
believe it. This is crazy. I got actual money in my bank account. Like people all over the world are paying me to record my voice, so that's cool.
So was it like for commercials or for like cartoons or like what were you doing voiceover work for?
Mostly like commercials, corporate
Mhm.
stuff, training videos, that kind of thing. It wasn't like cartoons or voice acting. So
Uh-huh.
maybe it wasn't on the fun side of voice work, but I liked it because it was free, like the freedom that you get just making money for
Yeah.
yourself.
And
So then I thought,
how'd you even get into that? I'm sorry, this has always fascinated me when I learn about this stuff cuz like you hear the commercials and you're like, who is that? Is it somebody I know?
yeah, no, I just done a little like college radio work and internet radio back in the day when I was a teenager. I just really liked that
Okay.
stuff. So once I came across this, it was Fiverr, the website where you
Uh-huh.
can sell services online. Well, I
Yeah.
can do voiceover. I have a microphone and I have a voice, and I've been messing around with this stuff. So I started, and so that was cool. But I thought,
Uh-huh.
how can I make more money? Like, could I
Yeah.
just stop working at this other job? What do I do?
Yeah.
And so around 2015, podcasting wasn't brand new, but it was definitely picking up.
Yeah,
And so because
definitely.
I had gone to college and had all these skills, I thought I can do this type of service. Let me put that on here
Okay.
and see if
Uh-huh.
anyone buys it. And before I knew it, that had actually become bigger than the voice work. And I started
Okay.
traveling a little. And like the voice work is difficult to do when you travel because you need a
Mhm.
quiet space and you
Yeah.
really need a proper studio for that. So I eventually just stopped doing that altogether because the editing had become so big, and
Mhm.
it continued to grow to a point where it was too much for me because a lot of this is manual dialogue editing where you're going through a whole podcast and taking out
Mhm.
and little like
Yeah.
stumbles and things like that. It takes you twice the length to edit. So if it's an hour podcast, it takes me 2 hours. I
Mhm.
cannot do any more than a certain number of those in a single day.
Right.
So presented with that challenge was the first time I got additional help. Like I
Mhm.
mentioned, I didn't have a business background, so I didn't really know other than just to like get someone to help with that.
Mhm.
And so I fixed that problem, and then we encountered more and more problems, and
Okay.
it just kept growing. So that it evolved, and then um, one thing with the I don't know about the states, but Canada, like tax wise, I should have incorporated sooner because the business
Oh.
got way too big too fast, and had to pay the personal tax rate on all those earnings.
Oh, okay.
So that's like another case of problem. And then how do I fix that? So then I was like, okay, we got to incorporate right now.
Uh-huh.
So we started. Then it became an actual corporation, and
Mhm.
there's other things that come with that, like a proper bank account and legal stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just kind of an evolution, and it just kept growing. And then it got to the point where, well, I'll say I was motivated that entire time because I just thought, well, how big can this get? Like,
Uh-huh.
this is pretty fun, but why stop
Yeah.
here? It's like
Yeah.
people are coming. So, how do we grow it? How do we
Mhm.
put in a system to keep everyone on track and organized? And what's the next step? So, that was the big motivation for why it
Uh-huh.
got to where it did. It was just like, why
Okay.
stop? I'm not going to, this is fun. I
Yeah.
guess that's any
Well,
entrepreneur.
well, no, I think it's so cool because it's almost like you were kind of an accidental entrepreneur. You were just like, well, why don't I try this and this works, and then but then you had that growth mindset where you're like, wait, this is working. Let's keep doing this. Let's keep doing that, and then you're like, okay, I need more people, and now I need help with like solving different types of problems, and now I feel like you've really what you guys are doing is really really awesome. So I'm
Mhm.
excited to see how you continue to kind of grow that because it sounds like you're kind of doing one of these where you want to go down a little bit, but then you want to just really go up with your like ideal customer.
Yeah, I think accidental entrepreneur describes it well, which is odd because growing up, I was always quite entrepreneurial and crafty like
Uh-huh.
that, but I never had it in my head that I should do that. I just didn't think,
Hmm.
I just thought you go get a job when you grow up. That
Yeah.
was it. Like this fun is over. But then I realized,
Oh.
wait, I could actually, um, so yeah. And we hit a point in the business too. This is around when I started with the consultant where it was growing basically on its own up until that point, which was nice if you start a
Mhm.
business and it just grows and you don't have to
Mhm.
do any marketing or think about it.
Yeah.
But then it kind of just started to plateau, and that's when I became more interested in what do I do now? Could I
Mhm.
make it bigger? And what if it
Mhm.
starts to get smaller? How do I rectify that? So
Right.
then I became much more of like a CEO type guy where I'm learning
Uh-huh.
all the time. How do we market? Let's do something about this. And so now I'm really down that path of really business heavy marketing strategy just by necessity. But again,
Yeah.
I don't want to stop. I want it to keep growing. And it's still enjoyable, although it's more of a
Mhm.
challenge. It's just still enjoyable to me.
Yeah, it's fun figuring out those problems. I think the strategy side of it, that's one of my favorite pieces of working with startups and with entrepreneurship in general is cuz it's like this constant growth. And like I think I saw somebody said where it's like you're building the airplane like while you're still like flying in the sky, right? And so there's so many things that you can do, but it's like then when you figure something out, it's like that sense of just like, yes, like we figured this out, like let's go, and you just keep moving forward.
Yes, well, that's where someone like you comes in great handy for this kind of thing, because otherwise you're just fumbling around, not even knowing if you're doing the right thing, and you might have 6 or 12 months go by before you realize you completely wasted your time on something. So
Yeah.
someone with experience like you can actually give you that, just put you on track much faster.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because I think sometimes it's so important to have an outside perspective and just somebody who isn't like in the weeds, right? Because so much of entrepreneurship, especially at the beginning, and beginning can be, 10 years worth of time, right? There's so much where like every single founder is in the weeds so deeply, and there's such a huge emotional attachment to the business and what you're building and where you want it to go that sometimes like having somebody from the outside come in and take a look at everything can ask some really good questions to help kind of bring you out of the weeds a minute and go, oh shoot, wait a minute, like maybe we should be doing this differently, or maybe that does make sense, or maybe I do need to hire somebody even though we've wanted to keep things as lean as possible. I often tell people like, hey, if your time is worth say like $500 an hour, you don't want to be doing a $20 an hour task. And sometimes that realization is like, oh my god, you're right. Like, why am I not outsourcing this task so then I can have more time for me, which is more valuable?
Absolutely. And there's going to be that area where people need to think about, do they have more time to trade or money to trade? You don't always
Hmm.
have the budget necessarily depending on your stage, but yeah, that's a great point, because this is something I've seen a lot in our business as well, because I work with a lot of people in that kind of phase of business where they may be a solopreneur or just past that, where they have a budget to outsource and delegate some things, but it might not cross their mind.
Hmm.
And I don't know what your journey with podcasting has been like, but I've seen a lot of people who they want to start a podcast and they're gone and learn this entire, like, now it's gotten easier with AI. I'm talking maybe some years ago now when this was more of a thing, but like they had to go and learn entire softwares and try to learn about audio and that kind of thing just to get their
Hmm.
podcast going. And I'm like, why
Yeah.
are you doing that? Someone exists who already does that, and you should be running your
Right.
business.
Right.
Because I had some cases of people coming and saying, I'm spending 5 or 6 hours an episode per episode editing it, and I don't want to. And I didn't even know
Yeah.
I could hire anyone
Why?
for it. So, but
Yeah.
that's just an example where I've seen all these
Uh-huh.
entrepreneurs who have so much better work they should be doing. And it
Hmm.
doesn't just necessarily have to be podcasting, but
Hmm.
yeah, they're like, it's like, why are you doing that? Whatever it
Yeah.
is, some kind of just time way. And I'm guilty of it too. I get stuck in things that just, I don't know, it's just on my desk, and I just think the easiest route is to try to fix it myself when it's really
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
But you get to become better at identifying those things as you move forward as well. And you can say, before I get 4 hours into this and realize I wasted my time, let me just go find someone right now who's going to fix this.
Right. No, that's so true. And it is funny to me too. I mean, I will say that I am a very trust the process type of gal. And so here's a great example. So when I worked at Intel years ago, we had all these different systems and tools, and they were constantly like creating new ones or bringing different ones on or making things better, which was great, right? Because like I didn't want to be analyzing every single like week's worth of demand that a customer was putting in for all of the like hundreds of chips that I was responsible for managing for that customer. So they would create these tools, and then they would say like, okay, you can go in here, you can input the demand, and then you can like run this solve, and it will give you this output of like what your demand signal should actually look like, and it'll smooth it out, and it'll do all these great things. And I was like, sounds good to me. Like, love that. And I just, they would said like, trust the tool. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to trust it and see what happens. And if it's not screwing things up when I get my response to my demand at the end of the week, I'm going to keep rolling with it. Or there would be other people and they would be like, oh, I'm still going to go in and I'm still manually adjusting every single, and I'm like, why? Like,
Yeah.
why are you doing that? That's like so weird to me. So with podcasting, I kind of like have taken like a similar approach. Like I'm in I use Riverside, like, and I'm in a Riverside group, and I hear people like complaining about certain things. And I'm like, I didn't even know that was an option. Like I go in, I use the editing tool, takes a maybe like, I mean, I like to listen to the whole episode. So I'm usually in there for more than an hour, but it's not because I'm tweaking so many things. It's because I more want to hear the episode and make sure that we both sound good. And there's not, like you said, kind of like these ahs, or like long pauses, or maybe if, one of us said something that kind of just didn't sound right. Usually it's me. I usually rarely edit out anything that my guest says. I've only had one or two instances myself where I'm like, that sounded really dumb. And so I just deleted it and then moved right on, and it was over. But yeah, I mean, I am now at a point where there are some things that I'm very acutely aware that I am not good at. And I'm like, maybe I should get a VA to like handle these couple of things, because I know that especially with some of the social media aspects of things, there's like so many people who are so good and so quick at doing things that probably take me way too much time.
Absolutely. Yeah. That we're on that journey as well, and bringing on an assistant. And that's a whole other thing in your business, because we've hit a lot of roadblocks where I'm sure other people could relate to, where it comes up that we can't outsource that. We can't delegate that because it's too complicated. And, the common point then is me. It's not that other people do it. So I have to then question, how do I make this not as complex? Because that's the issue. It's not that we can't hire anyone to do it. So yeah, that's and right, we're talking about, this whole thing. So I only really have experience with podcasting and dealing with clients there, but yeah, absolutely. Like I've had inquiries where people have clearly spent hours researching, and they'll come with all this technical stuff and say, I need this, and this done with my episode. And I would say, how do you even know what that is? And well, I don't know. I was Googling it. Like, why were you even Googling that? Like, here, give it to me. Don't worry about that stuff ever again. Go do something else and I'll take care of it. That's my job. And I like doing that, and I also like to learn a bit about things that I'm going to outsource. I'm just kind of curious about what it is, but enough to know if I want to get involved or just not. But yeah, that's so important for any entrepreneur to think about, is just don't waste your time on things that you can delegate. Always be looking for these ways to either automate it or delegate it when it makes sense.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So do you think in the future, as you continue to scale up with your right type of client, that's more in the health and wellness space, do you foresee or have, musings of bringing on any other types of niches into the platform?
We'll see. This is so new, and I think that it's plenty a big a niche for us that I don't really need to consider like expanding. And if anything, we need to go smaller. But I still do work with people who are not in health and wellness, whether they're new or existing clients, because we'll get referrals sometimes. I won't turn anyone away for that reason if they're not in health and wellness. We may turn people away for other reasons, but otherwise, we can still take on, because we can still take on other clients. But marketing wise, this is so new and I really like it. So I don't foresee changing that anytime soon. Like I said, if anything, maybe go smaller after some time. But for now, this is what we're doing.
Awesome. All right. Well, this has been so much fun. Before we wrap up, I want to ask you, given this, your experience in the health and wellness space and everything that you have been through with your own health and wellness journey, what would you say is the coolest or best health and wellness tip that you could share with folks?
I would say, just if you're not an active person or you don't care about your health, you haven't really thought of it, I think it's really good to do. I think we should all be proactive when it comes to our health. And this idea that you just go to the doctor when you're sick I don't really buy into that anymore. Like there's so much you can be doing to prevent things or optimize your health. And I'm at a point where I really, and I don't mean to sound condescending, but I can't fathom not going to the gym or not being active. And I know that's the case for many people, is just they don't even think of it. Like they probably just come home from work and watch TV.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot do that. Like, I feel really guilty if I don't go to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
So this would be my biggest tip, is if you're not considering that at all, like the types of food that you eat, which there's a
Mm-hmm.
whole, there's ingredients in a lot of food that I don't agree with. So eating
Yeah.
very natural, keeping active, even if it's just walking, but definitely start to take an interest in your health if you haven't already. That would be
Mm-hmm.
my like step one.
No, I love that. And I don't think that's condescending at all. I mean, I can't imagine not moving and exercising. And I think, with health too, it's so important to be like your own advocate. And kind of like you said, it's like you don't just go to the doctor when you're sick. You go to the doctor also when you're well, to like do checks on things, make sure that everything is running the way it's supposed to. I mean, we
Yep.
can't look inside, we can look outside of our bodies. We can see like what's going on here. So we know like, oh, I don't like, if you had a rash, you would notice it. But like, anything that's going on the inside, like you can't visibly see that. And if you don't feel badly, then you got to do those wellness checks as well to make sure that everything is running the way it should.
Yeah, and you don't need to be self-diagnosing, but there's so much
Yes.
information out there on so much information out there on the internet. You can
Mhm.
learn a lot, and it's good to just be prepared with knowledge that you can ask your doctor about, or find another specialist, or whatever the case. A podcast that I did with a lady named Boots, it was the heart surgery podcast.
Oh,
She
uh-huh.
had to go to the doctor multiple times, and they told her essentially she was crazy. There's nothing wrong with you, and she had to
Oh.
go back and back and back. And she was, reading information online and realizing that there's something very wrong with me. And
Mhm.
finally, she was able to get a diagnosis, but she had to do a lot of work for herself, like you
Dang.
said, advocating for yourself. So,
Mhm.
yeah, take ownership of your health, because really no one else is going to do it for you.
Totally. 100%. Well, I love it. I love that that's the note we're ending on. So, Joel, if somebody wants to get in touch with you and talk about podcast production, how can they find you guys?
Best thing to do is check out our website, eastcoaststudio.com. All of the social media is on there. So I'm always happy to connect. No pressure, just happy to chat about podcasting or anything else. So that's the best way.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. And everybody who is watching and listening, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, please comment, subscribe, like, share. Let me know what you think, all of the good things. I love to hear from you. And have a wonderful day. And we will see you next week.